Hello again, this is Odd Job Fix. I repair and restore antiques and collectibles, and other things as well. In this video, I repair a wall clock with an open pendulum. I give out tool tips along the way, and there's a little nugget at the end, so stick around. Let's take a look at the clock and determine concerns. This clock, branded a Garcia del Olmo, came to me with the hands falling off, the pendulum suspension wafer spring was broken, and the center pendulum rod holding the large round bob was broken off at the lyre. Lastly, the little nut at the very bottom of called the rating nut was missing. On the face below the center shaft it says Valladolid, a city in northern Spain. Due to the porcelain enamel face and the overall construction, it is likely a 19th century clock from Spain. It belongs to an antique dealer, and I'll leave the info in the description below. Let's start with the pendulum. Okay, I've moved the drill press into position here so that we can attempt to drill out these little rivets or studs, whatever they may be, and get this center rod out of here so we can put the long center rod all the way through there and have some support for that pendulum. So this is a pretty old drill press, not very well made. I'm holding the table with a pair of ice grips. It's going to take a small drill bit, and I found a number 52 in my numbered drills was just about what I needed. And I also found a fairly small center punch, and I was able, I think, to get a little bit of a start there. So back to this drill press, it does not hold really small drill bits, so I have this 1/4 inch chuck, and what I've done here is I threaded in a bolt and then machined it off with the chuck body in the lathe, so hopefully this thing runs pretty true. It would be dependent on the trueness of this chuck. We'll get it in there and put our number 52 bit in there. All right, and give that a little tap there. It looks like we're over the hole. So I'll check the speed on this thing. Okay, let's use part of the pendulum here to gauge how close we are to the. Okay, we hit bottom, and it actually felt like we hit bottom. It just a little relief right there at the end. So the next one is at this end, and again, hopefully our center punch will give us a place to start. I kind of don't like where that's going. I think I'm going to try to move that center punch a little towards the camera. This is actually a real center punch. That's more of a scribe. I was hoping. I've gone ahead and cut a section of this out with the Dremel tool. Interestingly enough, every other one of these is brass. The outside two, these two in the center are steel. So it was a little bit of a cut. Anyway, I took that piece, I blended it off, and I'm going to use it to drive out the last little bit down here at this end. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there was a hole drilled right right through there for one of those rivets or pins. Obviously that was a bad deal because, as I mentioned, all of that weight of the fulcrum was working that little joint right there and just broke off. We're going to be careful when we put this back together. All right, now we'll work on getting this piece out here. Chances are, if we go ahead and cut here, we'll be able to take the center section out pretty easily and then just work on this last little bit. I'll do that off camera. Nothing more annoying than the high-speed whine of a Dremel tool while making a video, so I spare you of that. We're going to see if we can grab this stub here. Okay, you might be asking yourself, why don't I use a little bit of oil? Generally speaking, oil from your fingers and unknown sources, whatever, is not very good for the patina of an old piece like this. I need to keep, washing my hands and trying not to handle and so that a month from now there's this big ugly fingerprint where I was working. But I think it, well, there it is. And there is the original hole. Okay, and I did try that number 52 bit, and we guessed right there. So what's left is the piece up here in the head, and I think at this point in time it's pretty loose, so next time we'll be recording here, we'll be putting the new piece back in. I'm back from my little period of cleanup on this, about 4 hours in a rust chelating, how do you say that, solution. So it's time to insert the rod. We need to drill some holes for some rivets or pins or whatever. I've been looking around. I found that this 1/8 or 16th inch welding rod fit the holes pretty well, but I'd have to make little buttons on the top to accommodate these rivet shapes, if you can see that right there. So there's just a little bit of a mushroom head there, not much. Actually, they're kind of flush, but they're still, I noticed that there's a little step in the hole. So the next thing that came to mind was I found out that the original pin was steel, not brass. This is one of the originals. So in that case, a nail will work. So I have some 4-penny finish nails, and they look like they're going to go in and tap right down there, and that's the hot ticket. So that having been done, we're going to put our rod in through these holes. Okay. There we are. So the challenge is the brass is soft and this center rod is steel again, so there's a good chance that it's going to want to go off center. As a matter of fact, I can look down there and see that the hole isn't even centered that well on the rod. So on at least one or two of these, the best thing to do would be to create a little flat. So let's see if I can mark it with the drill. I think that's it. So I'm going to go put over to the grinder and put a little bit of a flat on that, and then maybe we can center punch it. I was headed over to the bench grinder, and I remembered that I had one of these, which is for drilling safety wires and bolts. So I jumped on the lathe real quick and made a sleeve in here so that our rod will go in there. And I set it up a little loose, but I think it'll be all right. But very difficult to locate where I want to drill that hole. So one of these, the collar here on a pilot drill. Okay, I'm just finishing up this hole in the end of the rod. I did end up putting a flat on there and to get that bit started. And this collar registered my depth. So we just need to insert it in here. I wanted to do the one hole before I mark the others. I doubt if I could do three at once and get them all to lay out right. So we'll get this one pinned and then do the others. Incidentally, if you're in a situation where you've got these little drill bits and they're dull, the best way to sharpen a little drill bit is to buy a new one. But if you can't make it to the store, there we go. Drop right in there. Nice. Well, as I was saying about little drill bits, if you can't get a sharp one, a new one, grab yourself a welding tungsten holder and get a drill gauge, diamond card 600, 1000. Set it up on your 135. Line up the points so they're north and south, up and down, and then just draw it along. You can roll it a little bit if you want. It'll get you by. Okay, looks good. What we need to do now is mark these other holes. Now I'm not going to drill all the way through this one. That was what was wrong with this to start with. So I'm going to pin this from the front just to fill that hole there, and I'm not going to go all the way through. I may have to do another one from the back side too to make it look like it goes all the way through, but I think that's the Achilles heel of this thing. We're drilling over 50% of the diameter of this thing just to get these number 2, about 62 to 64 thousandths pins in here, which are really finish nails. Okay, the procedure here was to lightly tap that center rod. Just to get a mark. I think that'll do it. And while we're here, I've got this thing located with the first pin. We'll get a little dimple on the third one too. I don't even know why I'm dimpling that one since I'm not really going to pin it. Okay, there it is. We'll go through the same procedures we did before. Put this through here. On the money twice there. As I said, that pin doesn't go all the way through. So that's more of a rivet. This is more of a pin. And we're just going to leave that alone. Next step, final assembly. Okay, I'm going to drive this one home here. And on this one here, I think we're going to try to put in the original. This is a blind rivet. Nice. Trim this off, just a little proud. And we'll mushroom it over a little bit. That's not going anywhere. Ready to go. I've gone ahead and slipped this piece on here. All of these rods came out the bottom of this, and when I got it, of course, this was a basket case. But so I'm not real sure how that was actually held in there, because there was no evidence of it being pinned. So I think what we're going to do, I'm going to set it down on this piece of nylon. I think I'm just going to lightly stake it. Now let's not hear about the two hammers thing. I'm going to just, that'll hold it. This piece was the piece that was on below that. It's interesting. It was brass on the front, painted steel on the back. The whole thing is kind of funky. It's sort of a folk art type of thing. And you can see there's just a wire keeper here that there may have been one at the other end. Let's take a walk around the clock and see what we've done so far. Obviously, I've got the face off of the clock and exposed the movement. When I got the clock, there was a problem. The suspension spring, which is right at the top there, it's too very thin, just under 4/1000 spring steel, and that was completely broken. I tried to make this one, but it didn't turn out too well, and as you can see, it's not centered. So I found a new one, and we're going to install that and get that part going. In the meantime, over here on the clock dial, I did a little bit of a repair there by the chime winding arbor hole. It looked like a bullet hole had been shot through it. Boy, that'd be a story, wouldn't it? And then the pendulum itself, I think I was calling this a box. It's a bob, and of course the entire thing is the pendulum. We installed that new center rod all the way down and pinned it into those brass crossbars. But the bottom very most piece, known as the regulating nut, was missing, so I turned this on the lathe, and at this point in time I'm sure it's completely out of adjustment, so we'll have to get the clock going in order to figure out how that is going to come into play. So because the bob actually needs to be tucked up underneath those two ears of the lyre, and I think this is going to end up down here about where it is, so I think there's another piece that's going to be made in between this and the bottom of the bob. And when that's all done, this will have to be darkened or patinated, as they say, to sort of match the patina of the rest of the clock. So as far as repairs to this part here, I think since this is not my clock, I've been told to leave it alone. But you can see there's some problems here. This is actually broken, and where that is on the clock is actually right here. So it fell over or something, and since it's unsupported above, I think it just got folded completely back over the top, and it's kind of a mess. But I really don't know the value of this clock. It's definitely 19th century from what I can tell. Spanish in origin by the name, and really I'm not an horologist. I only do case repairs and metal repairs and things like that. I have no business trying to get into the movement of this clock. That's for a qualified clock repair person. So with that having been said, let's get into the rest of it. All right, we're set up to put this new suspension spring in here that I showed you earlier. It came with one pin, and the ones in here are tapered, very small taper. So I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to try to use the original ones. Now, I'm going to remove this screw. If you work on antiques, you're going to have a lot of flat blade screwdrivers, no matter how unpopular you think they are, because people want to see the original screws. There's a theory about flat blade screws, and it goes as follows. Your screw head has its square cut and your blade is tapered. The correct blade will not touch the bottom of the screw head. Instead, it'll hit those two shoulders and wedge itself in there. It won't wiggle, and it won't booger up the screw. So I've gone through a few here, and for some reason this little guy that was an insert for a drill fit this just about right. Let's see if I can do it when I don't need a handle. And there it slipped a little bit, but it's a pretty good fit, and this is not a beautiful screw. Now, this first little pin up here, I don't know if you can see that, but it's very slightly tapered. Now, having done all of that, I just realized that this thing is captured on this shaft here, so taking that screw out didn't help a single bit. So I'll leave it in the video just because of the lesson about the screwdrivers and the various heads. It doesn't matter if you're not going to be putting a whole ton of force on a lot of these screws, so it doesn't matter if they're high quality screwdrivers or not. As long as they're nice and square, keep them dressed, and don't be afraid to take an old screwdriver and redress it to exactly what you need for each particular job. So there is that second pin. This is the top pin, the longer one. This is the bottom pin. And there's the bogus suspension spring that I tried to make. Let's see how this is going to work. We'll drop that down, and hopefully we can line these up. All right, this is what I'm talking about up here. Well, that takes care of that. We're ready to mount the face. Put in the date hand. Oh yeah, this clock's got 31 days.